Deeply Odd, an John Thomas novel by Dean Koontz. Starts with a quote: "They followed the light and the shadow, and the light led them forward to light, and the shadow led them to darkness." T.S. Eliot. Chorus is from The Rock 7. Deeply Odd. Chapter 1. Before dawn, I woke in darkness to the ring of a tiny bell, the thimble-sized bell that I wore on a chain around my neck. 3 bursts of silvery sound, a brief silence after each. I was lying on my back in bed, utterly motionless, yet the bell rang 3 times again. The vibrations that shivered through my bare chest seemed much too strong to have been produced by such a tiny clapper. A third set of 3 rings followed, and then only silence. I waited and wondered until dawn crept down the sky and across the bedroom windows. Later that morning in early March, when I walked downtown to buy blue jeans and a few pairs of socks, I met a guy who had a .45 pistol and a desire to commit a few murders. From that encounter, the day grew uglier, as surely as the sun moved from east to west. My name is Odd Thomas. I have accepted my oddness, and I am no longer surprised that I am drawn to trouble as reliably as iron to a magnet. 19 months ago, when I was 20, I should have been riddled with bullets in that big new shopping mall shootout in Pico Mundo, a desert town in California. They say that I saved a lot of people in my hometown, yet many died. I didn't. I have to live with that. Stormy Llewellyn, the girl I loved more than life itself, was one of those who died that day. I saved others, but I couldn't save her. I have to live with that too. Living is the price I pay for failing her, the high price that must be paid every morning that I wake. In the 19 months since that day of death, I have traveled in search of the meaning of my life. I learn by going where I have to go. Currently, I rented a quaint, furnished 3-bedroom cottage in a quiet coastal town a couple of 100 miles from Pico Mundo. The front porch faced the sea, and yellow bougainvillea cascaded across half the roof. Anna Maria, whom I had known only since late January, occupied one of the bedrooms. She appeared to be ready to give birth in about a month, but she claimed that she had been pregnant for a long time and insisted that she would be pregnant longer still. Although she said many things that I failed to understand, I believe that she always spoke the truth. She was mysterious, but not deceptive. We were friends, never paramours. A lover who is enigmatic will most likely prove to be a cataclysm waiting to happen. But a charming friend whose usual warmth is raveled through with moments of cool inscrutability can be an intriguing companion. The morning when I set out on a shopping expedition, Anna Maria followed me as far as the porch. She said, "Daylight savings time doesn't start for another 5 days." At the bottom of the steps, I turned to look at her. She wasn't a beauty, but she wasn't plain either. Her clear, pale skin appeared to be as smooth as soap, and her large, dark eyes, which reflected the sparkling sea, seemed as deep as galaxies. In sneakers, gray khaki pants, and a baggy sweater, she was so petite that she might have been a child dressed in her father's clothes. Not sure why she had mentioned daylight savings time, I said, "I won't be long. I'll be back hours before sunset." Darkness doesn't fall to a predictable schedule. Darkness can overwhelm you any time of the day, as you know too well. She once told me that there are people who want to kill her. Although she had said no more and had not identified her would-be murderers, I believe that she was as truthful about this as about all other things. "I'll stay here if you're in danger." "You're the one in danger, young man." "Here or there, anywhere, you're the one perpetually on the cliff's edge." She was 18 and I was nearly 22, but when she called me young man, it always felt right. She possessed an air of timelessness, as if she might have lived in any century of recorded history or in all of them. "Do what you must," she said, "but come back to us." "Do what you must" sounded ominously significant, not the language one might use to send a friend off to buy socks. From behind Anna Maria and beyond a window, Tim watched solemnly. Crowding close to him on the left and right, paused on the windowsill, gazing at me, were our 2 dogs, a golden retriever named Raphael and a white German shepherd named Boo. Only 9 years old, Tim had been with us for over 1 month after we rescued him from an estate called Roseland in the sleepy town of Montecito. I've written about that ordeal in a previous volume of these memoirs. We were his only family now. Because of his unique history, we would soon need to fabricate an identity into which he could grow in the years to come. My life is as odd as my name. Tim waved at me. I waved at Tim. Just before stepping out of the house, I had asked the boy if he wanted to accompany me. But with a benign smile, Anna Maria had said that neither Xerxes nor Leonidas had invited small children to accompany them to Thermopylae. In 480 BC, 300 Spartans under the command of Leonidas had for a while held at bay 200,000 Persians under Xerxes in the Battle of Thermopylae before being slaughtered. I failed to see the similarity between my modest shopping expedition and one of the fiercest military engagements in history. Even though it is always fruitless to seek an explanation from Anna Maria when she makes such baffling statements, I considered asking for amplification. But she had opened the door for me, had waved me out of the kitchen, followed me onto the porch, and stood smiling at me as I looked back at her from the bottom of the steps. The moment to press her for elucidation seemed to have passed. Anna Maria's smile is so comforting that in its radiance you can almost believe that this world offers nothing more threatening than you'd find in Pooh Corner, in spite of her references to the slaughter of the Spartans. I said, "The bell rang last night." "Yes, I know." I didn't think she could have heard it from her room through two closed doors. Previously, she had told me that if the bell rang in the night, we would soon thereafter move on to a new place. She said, "I'll see you again when the wind blows the water black and white." And she turned away, retreating into the cottage. Beyond the beach, the sea spread blue to the horizon. The day remained still and mild, and the sky was so clear that it seemed I should be able to discern the stars in spite of the sunshine that concealed them. Not mystified, but certainly bewildered, I walked north half a mile to the heart of the village with the wariness that I hadn't felt minutes earlier. Shaded by ancient California live oaks, the downtown shopping area was a 3-lane street flanked by just 6 blocks of stores, restaurants, and quaint inns. If you wanted a real town, you had to go up the coast to Santa Barbara. I didn't know that a guy would soon offer to neuter me or that he would be carrying a pistol fitted with a sound suppressor. I have a psychic gift that occasionally includes a prophetic dream, but when awake, I do not see moments of the future. When I first noticed the truck that pricked my curiosity, I did not realize that a formidable enemy was behind the steering wheel. I didn't even get a glimpse of the driver. My unrelenting curiosity has gotten me in big trouble. It has also saved my butt a lot of times. On balance, it's a plus, and it isn't true that curiosity killed the cat. Usually, cats are done in by coyotes or Peterbilts. Anyway, my curiosity is part of my gift, my sixth sense. I am compelled to indulge it. The truck was an 18-wheel ProStar Plus. The cool-looking aerodynamic tractor with the massive grille and lizard-eye headlights was painted red and black with sparkly silver striping. The black trailer bore no corporate logo or advertising. As I reached the shopping district, the 18-wheeler cruised past me into the heart of the village, heading north. Without realizing what I was doing, I picked up my pace to a race walk. When the ProStar Plus braked at a stop sign, I almost caught up with it. As the behemoth accelerated across the intersection, I began to run, which was when I realized that I knew intuitively something about the truck must be evil. Well, not the ProStar Plus itself. I'm not one who believes that a vehicle can be possessed by a demonic spirit and driverless speed around town to run down people for the thrill of tasting blood with its tires, any more than I believe that Herbie, the Volkswagen in that series of Disney movies, had a mind of its own with a desire to bring lovers together and to thwart villains. If you believe the former, you have to believe the latter, and the next thing you know, you'll be taking your Ford with its sexy GPS voice to the car wash just to see her naked and soapy. I fell rapidly behind the truck, but then, near the northern end of the village, it turned left off the street toward a supermarket. If the driver had been making a delivery, he would have gone behind the building to the loading dock. Instead, he pulled to a stop across several parking spaces at the end of the lot nearest to the street. By the time I reached the 18-wheeler, where it stood in the trembling shade of a row of breeze-stirred eucalyptuses, it was unattended. Catching my breath, I walked slowly around the vehicle, looking it over. My intuition bristled like the hackles on a dog. Heightened intuition is part of my sixth sense. The day was mild, the breeze was mellow, but the area immediately around the truck was colder than could be explained by eucalyptus shade alone. When I put the palm of one hand against the sidewall of the trailer, it felt as though the driver had pulled off the road to wait out a blinding snow squall at high elevation. This wasn't what truckers called a reefer, which hauled frozen food. No refrigeration unit was mounted on the front wall of the trailer behind the tractor. I stood on the step beside the fuel tank to peer through a side window of the cab. Leather seats, wood panels and trim, an angled middle console with CD player and GPS, and a roomy sleeping box behind the cockpit provided a cozy environment. From the overhead Citizens Band radio with the drop-down microphone hung a string of red beads onto which were threaded 5 white skulls the size of plums. They appeared to have been carved by hand, perhaps from bone. People decorated the driver's compartments of their vehicles with all manner of items. Miniature skulls no more proved this driver dangerous than a dangling figurine of the Little Mermaid would have proved him to be an innocent dreamer. Nevertheless, I went around to the back of the rig to study the rear door of the trailer. Maybe I needed a key, maybe not. Before I could ascertain how the long latch bolts worked, a low, silky voice asked, "Do you like my truck, dirtbag?" He stood about 6'2", which gave him a few inches on me. Although he looked perhaps 35, his spiky hair was white, as were his eyebrows. He had Nordic features and a melanoma doesn't scare me tanning booth glow. His eyes were the precise blue of the water in a toilet bowl, equipped with one of those sanitizers, and just as appealing. Ever hopeful that even a situation that seemed fraught with the potential for violence might turn out to be an occasion for mutual understanding and camaraderie, I pretended not to have heard the dirtbag part. I said, "Yes, sir, she's a beauty." "You want to know what I'm hauling? Curious, are you?" "No, sir, not me. Just an admirer of trucks." His teeth were so unnaturally white that I felt in danger of sustaining a radiation burn from his smile. "Are you a believer?" he asked. In the circumstances, the question seemed so loaded that any too specific answer might offend. "Well, I guess we all believe in one thing or another." He looked as though he believed in rhinestone cowboy clothing. His custom pointy-toed black boots were inlaid with patterns of white snakeskin. Black jeans with scarlet stitching along the hems and seams and pockets. Red silk shirt with black stitching. A black bolo tie with what might have been a carved bone slide in the form of a serpent's head and matching bone aglets. His black sports coat featured scarlet lapels and collar peppered with sequins. "If you're a believer," he said, "how many steps are there in the stairway to heaven?" "Well, sir, I'm no theologian, just a fry cook out of work." "There are just 2 steps in the stairway to heaven, dirtbag. The first step is touching my truck. The second is not explaining yourself to my satisfaction." "Sir, the truth is she's a beauty, and I've always wanted to be a long-haul trucker." "You never wanted to be a long-haul trucker." "I will admit that's a stretch, but she is a beauty." The .45 Sig Sauer with silencer appeared in his hand the way a dove appears in the hand of a good magician, as if it materialized out of thin air. Worse, the pistol was aimed point-blank at my crotch, which wouldn't have worried me so much if it had been a dove. "How'd you like to be a eunuch and never be troubled again by performance anxiety?" He frabbed me with his bright smile, and I was like an over-easy egg on the griddle waiting for the spatula. "I wouldn't much like that, sir." The line of eucalyptus trees largely screened us from passing traffic in the street. People came and went from the supermarket parking lot, but they were all much closer to the building than to us. They weren't interested in a couple of truckers, and the cowboy's body prevented them from seeing the gun. You think I won't do it right here in the open, but you'd be surprised what people don't see. They won't hear the shot. You'll drop before you get the breath to scream. The instant you drop, I'll stomp your throat, crush your windpipe. Then I'll handle you like you were a drunk, prop you against one of those trees like you're a hobo sleeping off a bender. Nobody wants to check out a piss-drunk hobo, and I guarantee no one will remember me. No one will have seen me. I recognized sincerity in his toilet water eyes, and I knew that, as crazy as it sounded, he might flush me out of this world. Being as I'm a low-key guy and as ordinary-looking as any other unemployed fry cook, considering also how genuinely terrified I must have looked, he didn't expect me to seize his wrist in both of my hands. I forced the muzzle of the Sig Sauer away from my dangly things, farther down between my legs. He squeezed off a shot, which made less noise than did the slug ricocheting off the pavement near my left foot. Maybe I couldn't have twisted his wrist hard enough to make him drop the weapon, but something extraordinary happened. When I touched him, even as the bullet left the sound suppressor with a soft thump, the parking lot went away, and for a few seconds a vision in my mind's eye swelled outward to encircle me. I seemed to be standing in a moonless night before a stainless steel platform on steel legs, a round stage, lit by the leaping flames of 4 torches fixed to tall poles. On the stage, in straight-back chairs, sat 3 children, a boy of about 8, a girl of perhaps 6, and an older girl who might have been 10. Something was wrong with them. They sat wide-eyed but slack-mouthed, their hands limp in their laps, emotionless, drugged. A white-haired man in a blood-red suit, black shirt, and black mask ascended to the stage on steel steps. He was carrying a flamethrower. He torched the children. The vision burst like a bubble. Reality returned, and the cowboy and I staggered backward from each other, the pistol on the pavement between us. His stunned expression and a wildness in his eyes told me 2 things. First, he'd seen the same vision that I had seen. Second, he was the masked man in the red suit, and he already intended at some future date to set helpless children afire in an insane act of homicidal performance art. I had just experienced my first portent of the future that did not come in the form of a prophetic dream. He went for the drop pistol, but I was able to kick it under the 18-wheeler even as his fingers were an inch from the prize. As if from a forearm sheath, a knife slid into his right hand, and a thin 6-inch blade sprang out of the yellow handle. I dislike guns, but I'm no fan of knives, and I carry neither. I turned away from him and ran across the parking lot toward the market, where he wouldn't dare slash at me in front of witnesses. Suddenly, the entire world seemed to have turned hostile, as if the spirit of ultimate darkness had arrived to rule. His hour had come round at last. Even my morning shadow, following as I ran westward, seemed to have ill intentions, as if it would catch me and drag me down. When I glanced back, the cowboy trucker wasn't coming after me. I couldn't see him anywhere. I slowed to a fast walk so as not to draw attention to myself, and when the automatic door slid aside, I went into the coolness of the market. If I had been in Pico Mundo, my hometown, I would have known what to do. The chief of police there, Wyatt Porter, understood me and believed in me. On my say-so, he would have detained the cowboy and searched the truck. But I had been on the road for some time now, going where my unusual talents were most needed, drawn by siren songs that I could not hear, but to which my blood responded. Nobody in this place knew me, and I would sound like just another drug-addled paranoid, another piece of sad human wreckage of the kind that littered the landscape of an America that seemed to be rapidly fading out of history, in a world growing darker by the day. In the market, I stood at a closed checkout station, pretending to be searching for a particular magazine among the many offered, but in fact watching the customer doors at the north and south ends of the building. A little more than a month earlier, in a town called Magic Beach, I had for the first time by touch recognized a potential murderer. On that occasion, into my mind's eye and into his had erupted a scene from a nightmare of nuclear Armageddon that I dreamed the previous night, and I had known that he must be part of a conspiracy to atomize American cities, but I had not dreamed of these children set a fire upon a stage. I didn't expect the cowboy to follow me. I expected him instead to board his big rig and head for whatever highway to hell he might be programmed into his GPS. The vision surely rattled him as much as it did me, but as I long ago learned, expectations are fragile and easily shattered. The cowboy came through the north doors, spotted me at once, and approached purposefully. He looked like a star in some parallel world version of Nashville's Grand Ole Opry, one that featured maniac country singers. I hurried down the cereal aisle, turned right, and crossed the big store to the produce section, buying time to think. Even if I could find a sympathetic shopper, or a credulous clerk, or an off-duty police officer picking through the Macintosh apples, I couldn't seek help from anyone because of the aftermath of my few weeks in Magic Beach. Bad people were in jail in that town, and other bad people were dead. Homeland Security and the FBI had been brought in at the end of those events by an anonymous phone call that I placed, and now they were seeking someone fitting my description, though they had no name. I dared not attract the attention of the police in this smaller town, which was little more than 100 miles farther along the coast from Magic Beach. In this big, complex, often mysterious world, I don't pretend to know much. How to make fluffy pancakes might be the most important knowledge that I possess. In spite of my ignorance, I know without a doubt that if federal officers of any agency were to suspect that I possess paranormal abilities, I would spend the rest of my life in custody being used for their purposes. I would also be studied and might be the subject of unpleasant experiments. I have a perhaps irrational but nonetheless genuine fear of scientists. Sewing open my skull while I'm awake and sticking pins in various parts of my brain to determine if they can make me cluck like a chicken or bark like a dog, or sing the lead role in the Phantom of the Opera. A spectacle in black and red, the cowboy arrived in the produce department. His pistol and his knife were tucked out of sight, but his face announced his madness as obviously if he had been shouting gibberish and capering like a monkey. At that moment, I realized something more striking about this man than just his wardrobe and his taste for psychotic violence. In spite of his flamboyance, he seemed to elicit no special interest from the shoppers or the market staff around us. They appeared all but oblivious of him. Of course, a lot of people these days have developed a kind of radar to spot the numerous lunatics among us, and when that little alarm of recognition goes off in their minds, they keep their heads down and avert their eyes. They go about their business as if they're tuned out of here and now, instead tuned into their private realities. Look at that weird dude with blue fire shooting out of his eyes. And look at these peaches. These are lovely peaches. I've never seen finer peaches than these superb peaches. And look at those grapes. I'm gonna buy some peaches and grapes, or maybe I should mosey over to the baked goods and browse there until I've thought over this scary peaches and grape thing for a while. But I suspected that he drew no attention for some other reason, which eluded me. A cowboy approached me and stopped on the other side of the wide display bin, which offered 4 varieties of apples on my side, potatoes and sweet potatoes and leeks on his side. His fixed smile reminded me of a hyena, if a hyena had an excellent oral health plan and a first-rate dentist. He said, "You come with me and answer some questions about what happened back there, and I'll kill you easy. If you don't come, I'll blow away a couple of these innocent women shopping for groceries, and then I'll kill you. Want that on your conscience." I didn't think this was a guy who ever bluffed. He did what he wanted to do and moved on. As crazy as he might be, however, he didn't want to go to prison or to be shot down by police responding to the outrage that he had just now proposed. When I didn't answer him, he drew the silencer-equipped pistol from under his sports coat and shot a cantaloupe on the pile that an elderly woman was examining. Chunks of rind and orange melon flesh flew into the air and spattered the shopper. She startled backward. Oh, goodness. Although the cowboy still held the Sig Sauer, when the woman looked around in perplexity, her gaze rested longer on me than on him, and the pistol didn't seem to register with her. She was bewildered, not afraid, apologizing as if from time to time these darn cantaloupes just blew up on people. A produce department clerk hurried to the elderly woman, showing no interest in the cowboy. The other customers focused on the clerk and the melon-soiled lady. The trucker's hyena smile grew wider. I remembered something he had said when he threatened to make a eunuch of me in the parking lot. "You'd think I won't do it right here in the open, but you'd be surprised what people don't see." He expected me to run, whereupon he would have to shoot me in the back and forget about the interrogation that he wanted to conduct. But as he might have remembered from our recent encounter in the parking lot, expectations often don't pan out, and what he did not expect was an assault with high-velocity fruit. Without taking time for a wind-up, I snatched a Red Delicious apple off of the display in front of me and put a spin on the pitch. It hit him dead center in the face. He staggered backward, and a second Red Delicious bounced off his forehead as blood streamed from his nose, stunning him so that he reflexively dropped his gun. I had been a pitcher on our high school baseball team, and I could still put the ball where I wanted it with wicked speed. Moving fast along the display bin, I picked up a couple of Granny Smiths, which are hard little green numbers used for baking. The first hit his mouth maybe 2 seconds after he took the Red Delicious to the head, and the second caught him in the throat, dropping him to the floor, overwhelmed by apples. Shoppers cried out, staring at me as if I were the deranged man, and as though the costumed cowboy with the silencer-equipped pistol were as innocent as a lamb set upon by a rabid wolf. The produce department clerk shouted at me. I threw Granny Smith with no intention of hitting him. He ducked. He popped up, and I threw another Granny Smith. He turned and fled, crying out for help, and all the terrified customers fled after him. Around the other side of the display bins, the apple-stunned cowboy, bleeding from his nose and from a split lip, was on his hands and knees, reaching for the pistol that he had dropped. He would retrieve it before I could kick it away from him. I ran from the produce department, past displays of exotic imported crackers, cookies, and candies, left into the long back aisle, past coolers offering cheeses and a bewildering variety of pickles. Before I got to the fresh meat display, I slammed through a pair of swinging doors into an immense stockroom with tall metal shelving units to the left and right. A couple of stock boys in white aprons looked up from their work as I sprinted through their domain, but they wisely did not pursue me. Now I was the beneficiary of that lunatic identifying radar that I had mentioned earlier. As if desperately fleeing men raced wild-eyed through this place a few times every day. The stock boys continued preparing huge carts full of bagged potato chips and cheese doodles for delivery to the selling floor. Passing a cart on which were stacked open cases of canned goods, I borrowed a 2-pound can of baked beans and then another. At the back of the stockroom, in line with the door by which I had entered, another metal door led to the loading dock and the service alley. I left it ajar to indicate where I had gone and stood with my back against the building wall, a can of beans in each hand. Such is the absurd and violent nature of my life that I am not infrequently reduced to battles involving highly bizarre bad guys and unconventional weapons that Mr. Matt Damon and Mr. Daniel Craig never have to deal with when, always solemn and dignified, they save the world in their movies. I expected the cowboy to follow me as quickly as he was able. He didn't seem to be a guy who quit easily, nor did he seem to be one who would proceed with caution. When he plunged through the door, eager to lose track of me, I would beat him with one can and try to smack the gun out of his hand with the other. After a minute or so, I began to wonder if I had disabled him more than I'd realized. At about the 1.5-minute mark, the door opened, slowly. One of the stock boys warily peeked out, reeled back in pale-faced fright as if I were Dr. Hannibal Lecter, holding 2 severed heads, and hurriedly returned to his cheese doodles. I put down the cans, jumped off the loading dock, and sprinted toward the north end of the building. If the cowboy decided to disengage, I needed to get the license number of his truck. I could make an anonymous call to the highway patrol, accuse him of hauling contraband of one kind or another, and give them an excuse to look in that black trailer. Although my special intuition told me that he had not yet abducted the children, there would almost certainly be something incriminating in his trailer. I turned the corner, ran along the north wall, and burst into the parking lot where sunlight dazzled off 100 windshields. The truck was gone. I hurried among the parked cars, slipped between 2 trees in the row of tall eucalyptuses at the end of the lot, halted on the sidewalk, and looked both ways along the street. No red, black, and sparkly silver ProStar Plus. From a distance came a siren. After crossing the street, I headed south, glancing in shop windows. Just a young guy off work with a day to kill. Not at all the kind of hooligan who would terrorize innocent grocery shoppers with a ferocious barrage of fruit. I made a mental note to mail $5 to the supermarket to pay for the damaged apples when this business with the cowboy was concluded. I wouldn't pay for the cantaloupe. I hadn't shot it. The maniac had shot it. Yes, I had fled into the market, drawing the maniac after me. Therefore, an argument could be made that part of the cost of the cantaloupe might be my responsibility. But the line between moral behavior and narcissistic self-righteousness is thin and difficult to discern. The man who stands before a crowd and proclaims his intention to save the seas is convinced that he is superior to a man who merely picks up his own and other people's litter on the beach, when in fact the latter is in some small way sure to make the world a better place, while the former is likely to be a monster of vanity whose crusade will lead to unintended destruction. Not a penny for the damn cantaloupe. If I was wrong and woke up in a chamber in hell, eternally drowning in the slime and seeds found in a cantaloupe's core, I would just have to deal with that. As I followed the sidewalk south, the bright image of the 3 torched children plagued me. I didn't know when or where the cowboy trucker intended to burn them or why. My sixth sense has limits and often frustrates more than serves me. Do what you must, Anna Maria had said. Her words seemed to be not merely advice meant for this moment, but also a recognition of the likelihood that, after all, I would not be back long before sunset. I really needed socks and a new pair of jeans, but given a choice between replenishing wardrobe items and trying my best to prevent children from being cooked alive, the correct course seemed obvious. Hurrying through the village along a sidewalk dappled with sunshine and oak shadows, I intended to do the right thing. Ironically, in order to do the right thing, I needed to steal a car, and quickly.